Terrors Inconceivable by Nick Mance. It was an avalanche that finally halted Adam's journey. He'd already faced a disastrous string of setbacks, but through gritted teeth, daring, and luck, he'd overcome them all. But gritted teeth and daring would not open up a road buried under half a mountain of snow. His luck had run out.
"You should stay for winter," advised the landlady of the Sky Hearth, where he'd taken lodgings for the night. "It'll all melt in its time and you can be on your way."
Adam took a sip of his watery mead. "When will it thaw, do you think?"
"A month or two, I should reckon."
Adam felt the slackness of his money bag glumly. With his progress so completely hindered, there was little left to do other than relax. After weeks of relentless movement, he finally had a chance to take in the scenery. Waycleft was a neat little town, perched upon a mountain ledge, overlooking a dense forest. Brightly painted wooden houses climbed the rocky slopes, linked together by washing lines and bunting and coloured lanterns. The locals seemed friendly enough, Adam decided, the sort who might be generous when his money eventually dried up. The town seemed as normal as any other, but for a single oddity. At the rear of the town, where the mountain formed an unscalable wall, there was an iron doorway set into the rock. An arch of illegible charcoal markings surrounded it. A semicircle of lanterns formed its doorstep. Nobody seemed to go in or out, or acknowledge the door at all. That evening, Adam dined on the cheapest platter available, and fell into conversation with the local blacksmith. When Adam mentioned the door, the blacksmith's face became grave.
"Oh, you don't want to know."
"Why not?" Before the blacksmith could answer, the door of the inn opened, and a dashing young man walked in. He was draped in fine furs with a plumed hat, a glamorous woman on each arm. The atmosphere in the inn changed immediately. The previously drab little bard in the corner leapt atop his stool and began playing with gusto. A score of men called out for the newcomer to join them, contending to be the first to order him an ale from the bar.
"He seems popular,"
said Adam.
"He's every right to be,"
said the blacksmith, and promptly abandoned Adam to join the newcomer. From the moment the man in furs entered to the point of his departure, the entire inn revolved around him. He ate and drank for free, and told jokes that were amusing to all. When he left, half the patrons left with him. Adam had watched the whole thing bemusedly.
"What was that all about?"
he asked the landlady, as she picked discarded tankards off the floor. "That's Drake," she told him, "our protector."
"What does he protect you from?"
She scoffed. "Foreigners wouldn't understand." Adam's coin lasted a week. The landlady was merciful, and moved him to a bedroll in the cellar, assigning him the role of potwash and handyman. As his face became a familiar sight around the Sky Hearth, the locals began to open up.
"Once a year? Every year,"
recounted an old man as Adam slowly wiped his table.
"Our Drake goes through that door to face terrors inconceivable. He goes in, he comes out, and then we're safe for another year."
"Safe from what?"
"From terrors inconceivable, like I said."
"What sort of terrors?" But he was told off for asking stupid questions. Drake was only an occasional patron of the Sky Hearth. Adam saw snatches of him around town, usually followed by a trail of admirers, but the moments were rare.
"He spends most of his time in that mansion of his," the landlady told him, "preparing himself for the next time he needs to go through the door."
Adam had seen the house from afar, balconies and turrets, surrounded by a walled garden, perched high on a ridge overlooking the rest of town.
"He's wealthy, then?"
"Wealthy?" the landlady scoffed. "He don't need money. We built him that house."
"Just because he goes through a door once a year?"
"Because he faces terrors inconceivable, to protect us. I told you foreigners wouldn't understand."
The longer Adam stayed in Waycleft, the more curious about Drake and the door he became. Nobody could give him a solid answer about what sort of terrors lay beyond the door. They were happy not knowing. Happy that only Drake knew. Choosing a day when the landlady was in a good mood, he dared to challenge her. "How do you know he's telling the truth? None of you have ever seen these inconceivable terrors. Perhaps there's nothing on the other side." She smiled at him, as though he were a child. "You should see him when he comes out. He's pale and shaking and mute for a week afterwards, 'cause of the horrors he's seen." That gave Adam pause to think, but his reason won out. Such symptoms were easy to fake. Was it all a charade? Drake had the whole town under his thumb, and all it seemed to cost him was a week's pantomime each year. As winter thawed to spring, Adam was informed that the mountain road was passable again. He decided to stay. The day of the door was drawing close, and Adam wanted to see it for himself. His journey could wait. A sombre mood had settled over the town. The musicians had retired their instruments. The bunting disappeared. Drake had become a recluse in his mansion. The day of the door began with an ominous gong, signalling the start of a fast. Nobody appeared in the streets all day. Adam waited in the cellar, hungry and bored, yet intrigued by the thought of what was to come. The landlady came for him in the evening. "Put this on," she instructed, presenting him with a large black cloak. Adam wrapped himself in it and accepted a long candle. Then they joined a stream of townsfolk drifting somberly towards the cliff wall and the door to the mountain. Drake was there, at the centre of a growing crowd. He was dressed in elaborate robes, his skin marked with charcoal runes. His face was set towards the door, his eyes wide and staring, chest heaving. Adam's scepticism wavered. The atmosphere of dread made it hard to be cynical. It felt like something altogether otherworldly was about to happen. He looked at all the faces glowing in candlelight. Their eyes were scared, but hopeful, and every gaze was fixed upon Drake. The sun sank lower in the sky until it was lost behind the mountains. A mighty hush fell. Drake slowly looked around at them all, taking in each face one at a time. Then he turned, dragged open the door, and entered. As one, the townsfolk dropped to their knees. Adam's landlady grabbed his arm and pulled him down. "Now we pray," she said. "Who are we praying to?" But she was already mumbling incoherently with her face to the ground. Adam looked around at them all, and listened to the subdued babbling of their prayers. He looked at the door, and suddenly all his doubts returned. Drake was playing them for fools. He stood and walked forwards. A few people looked up and hissed at him, but he pressed on. There was a gasp as he stepped past the circle of lanterns and continued to the door. "Stop him!" someone called out in a harsh whisper, but none of them moved. Adam paused at the door, a final moment of doubt. Then he pulled it open and stepped into the mountain. The door closed. The townsfolk returned to their prayers with greater fervour. At midnight they broke their fast, and some of them slept, while others continued to pray. They took it in turns, right the way through the night. As the first rays of a new day began to rise up the mountain wall, the sleepers were roused and the townsfolk watched the door expectantly. After a while, there was a grinding creak, and it swung open. For a moment there was only darkness, then a pale figure staggered out. It came stumbling to the edge of the lanterns and fell to the ground. The crowd surged forwards, swamping the shaking form. The landlady fought her way to the front. "What happened?" she asked. "Where's Drake?" Trembling, Adam raised his eyes to hers.
"We're safe,"
he croaked.
"Safe for another year."